Hello, everybody. Wanted to give you some information on Module 3 really quick, in case you haven't have any questions. I just want to first remind you, as we get into the weekend, I know the course is kind of set up, if unless you're on top of things, to get into uh, questions whenever you're doing the work over the weekend. And so I just wanted to tell you all, please, if you could, don't email me over the weekend. Just shoot me a text. And that being said, that might be the best route to get a hold of me. There's so many times I'll get to my workstation on Monday morning and I realize several people have emailed me, and I'm just like you guys. I prefer to not do, have my email out all the time on Sundays. Would rather, enjoy that time for what it is. And so just shoot me a text and I'll get a hold of you. I'll respond back and be able to answer your question in a second. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. I want to talk first a little bit about your financial plan project. Okay. And so this is something that hopefully kind of is where the rubber meets the road for assignments in this class. And in here, we're going to kind of, again, the due dates on this are off, but basically we're going to go through several of these. And so if you kind of scroll down, you'll see first thing we're going to do is estimate your expenses for the month. Okay. And again, I apologize that the month is wrong, but it'll be, maybe this month of September. And I know a lot of you guys are in a different station in life where you're in college, and so expenses are going to look quite a bit different than if you're in the real world. Some of you maybe even are in the real world and have an apartment, have grocery needs and things like that. But just do your best in the moment now, as a college student, wherever you're at, answer these questions based on how much you would spend in different categories. Okay. And so, include the Netflix, include the other aspects of, the going out for dinner or coffee or whatever. And so I want you to just kind of follow that. And basically all we're going to be doing is creating a budget. That's really what it comes down to. And so in order to create a budget, the first thing that you have to do is you have to track expenses, because you need to understand just exactly where dollars are flowing out. And I've seen this in places as well. And, some students have talked like in the comments, like a lot of times when it comes to stress, right? The question I asked about your fears with money, they say things like, they're a little bit concerned when they go out and spend money if they can really afford this. Can I afford this? Can I is this a good decision for me to purchase this item or not? And I think that's a good question to ask yourself. But what a budget does is it creates for us the opportunity, all right, to know with absolute certainty that a decision, something that you're purchasing, is a good decision, right? Like I know with absolute certainty because I've created a budget. This is in my budget. I go on this trip, or I spend this money, or I go grocery shopping, or I buy something on Amazon. I have the money for it, right? Because it's earmarked and it's been prepared for and it's written out. And so a budget is there for us, even though it seems like it's a limiting thing, it actually provides you ample room of freedom, okay? Because no longer are you shackled by the question, is something really worth it? All right. So that being said, let's move into our lesson. And in this lesson, there's two aspects, right? We got two different chapters to go over. The first one is taxes, and I'm going to be as brief as possible because I understand, very few of you have been looking at the videos as well, but we want to make sure that, sorry, module 4. We want to make sure that I'm covering all the material, and that's really my point here, right? So chapter 4 is over tax and tax planning. And this is a big aspect of personal finance, even though it's not an exciting aspect to it, right? The textbook hits on this subject really early, which I don't know if I'd do if I were writing a textbook, because it might turn people off. to financial planning, but it is an important aspect of what we do. And you always have to consider the fact that, yeah, taxes are all these things, right? They're necessary pain, but they're also misunderstood and always changing. And usually that's for the complicated, not to be simpler. Okay. And so you need to understand your tax situation. You might even choose as you move down the road with your personal finances to do your own taxes. And you can read my logic here. I like it. I've done it. Maybe that's why I feel a little biased about it. But you do your own taxes. You figure out really how the system works. You kind of grow with the tax law as you kind of put things together as well. And um, I don't know. I mean, it might not, you might decide it's not worth your time, or you might get burned if you do it wrong, so to speak. But it's something worth considering. And nowadays, tax planning software is really good. Software does a good job of uh, not thinking, because it doesn't think, right, but like using those calculations to kind of plug in all the things where they need to go in the right places. Um, and so some people think like that, but not many of us, right? And so it makes sense for us to use tax preparation software. I've used TaxAct and TurboTax in the past, but a lot of them are very good. And in the end, I think maybe the goal here is like not to be overwhelmed by taxes and tax situation, right? A lot of times you'll actually receive a lot of information. Your W-2 work employment forms, Form 1099s, like for places you might have gotten a little interest from, and all these other forms. And really all you're doing is taking that information and putting it into this thing right here called the 1040 form, which in a nutshell tells you and tells the IRS all the information that they need to know. All right, this information is usually sent by your employer to them, as well as you sending this to them, right? So they already have all the numbers. Now they just need someone, you, and it's on you to do it, right? Create this form. And so you can look through all the aspects of it, but in the end, it's not really too complex, right? You put in your incomes, you make adjustments to that, usually with other added expense, money that you maybe had brought in. There are some things that you can subtract. And then there are some things that you can deduct, and exemptions you can take, and to the point where you ultimately end up with your tax obligation. And that's either more or less than what you've paid into the government through either wage, like payroll withdrawals, or quarterly payments straight to the government. Okay. And so feel free to look through all of this information. I wanted to touch briefly on this one, but I really wanted to hit on the one that's going to kind of fit our class a little bit better. And that would be module 5. Fit the assignment that I've been talking to you about. And so you'll see, and again, if you haven't pulled it up, I'd hope by now you have, but you could pull up the module 5 assignment outline, if that's how you operate a little bit better, so you can look and see all the different aspects of things that we talk about in these chapters. Okay. So in this chapter, maybe I'll just use these notes this time. We're going to talk about banking and interest rates, right? And what's crazy is not everyone's banked, and people who are the unbanked, about 10 million in the United States, are at a high risk of not having good financial outcomes because of that. So there's all these different terms that we need to know and understand, and you can kind of match those terms with the definitions as they come up, but just understand, what are depository informations. Like you make a deposit at the bank. That's what obviously that means. You have other institutions in banking and in finance that aren't related to just the idea of taking money in and putting money out, right? Like you think of a normal bank. What does a bank do? It keeps a ledger. It keeps a track of how much money you have with the bank, money flowing in, money flowing out. But it's also good to understand just how banks work, right? And some of you might understand these, like the fees that you're charged at times. I always tell students, listen, first, you should have free banking. Okay. If you don't have free banking, go somewhere else that does, because there's 1,000,000 banks that have free accounts that aren't charging you any fee to manage that. And so if you do have a fee, you probably even go to the bank that you will operate at, and they would switch accounts to something where you're not being charged. Some banks have a required minimum balance. If you're under that balance, they're going to start charging you, which again shouldn't happen, but does happen. Some banks have this a system where you have overdraft charges, right? So if you spend more than what's in your account, they will allow that transaction to go through, and they'll charge you a big fee for that quote service, and then you will need to, fully fund the account. And it's kind of silly because overdraft protection is not a very good service, right? I would rather get my card denied or bounce a check than paying those fees. And so just be aware of those things. Then that's honestly a lot of the reasons why banks, there are people who don't kind of have a bad taste in their mouth about banks, even though banks offer a necessary service, right? A place to keep the money that we have, to flow money in when we make it and out through, expenses and charges. But these fees oftentimes hit those who are in lower income, a little needier situation more. And so banks really make a lot of money off of those people, which is kind of sad. Banks make money off of two classes usually, right? The lowest because of the fees that they can charge them, and then the higher, the people with higher account balances, because they're able to make money off of the interest that they can accrue from those account statements. The more money, the more interest, and so forth and so on. Nowadays, you can choose between different types of particular banks and mixes between the two, like between online banks and brick and mortar. I think all of you nowadays are so comfortable with having your phone available, like you can get the app from your phone right on from your banking, and you can take pictures of checks, and you don't ever really need to go to a bank for much. And that's just the way it is. And some other people, especially the older generation, don't like that. But here are all the things you need to consider, right? Fee structure, deposit rates, insurance, loan rates, all the other information that goes with things that they'll charge you, how the customer service, how do they treat you, and do they give you the time of the day if you have any questions or needs that come up. Yeah, so that's a little bit about banking. Okay. Chapter 6 talks about managing our money. And this is kind of the start of that budgeting piece, right? At the beginning, we talked about the big 3 pieces of paper or big 3 documents that you need to have. And they're not really need to be documents. Matter of fact, I put all my information on a Google Sheet, and I share that with my wife, and we can pull it up when we need to. And it's all on just one spreadsheet table. But basically, all we have on there are the first part is our budget, which is money going out, right? Money that's spent goes there. And then the next category would be money coming in. Okay. And that's actually a whole nother document according to the text, right? And then we call that our cash flow statement. We need to make sure that money coming in is more than the budget. And I'll tell you guys, now, especially even just for a few months of working in financial planning, the piece is huge. There are so many people in our world that have a tough time with their finances or are stressed about their finances. And the truth is, it's because on a month-by-month basis, they don't know if they're spending more than they make. And it causes all kinds of ripple effects. They don't have much saved in cash, so they're always worried about spending down their cash. Why it's going lower, they don't know, right? They have issue with credit cards, and the question of, can I afford tomorrow or even afford today, is honestly in limbo because of those decisions. So the best thing to do is keep track of these things, right? So you have your budget, your cash flow statement, and then the last one is your net worth, how much you are worth. Okay. And so this chapter 6, doesn't go into great detail on these things, but it's titled Managing Your Money. And the first one is, you should have an emergency fund. You should have some cash built up. Okay. Because if you don't have cash built up, let's say you have something that happens, can you pay for it? Okay. Or say you want to go out and you need to go buy something, let's say a bigger purchase. Do you need to start saving for that, or do you already have that money available to you? Those are the kind of questions of how do you want to handle your cash. In my personal opinion, I would rather have at least enough cash on hand that I don't have to worry about my cash on hand. And for some people, those numbers are very different. Some people will only have 5,000 in cash, and others want to have 50, as crazy as it sounds when they start getting a little bit older. Um, People do have that much money just in the bank. But the point is, how should you handle those funds? You can put them in a lot of different places, and this chapter 6 goes over that. You can put them, I think one of the best options actually is like just putting them in an online savings account, which is funny because it's not even mentioned here, but like you'll get a higher interest rate than you would at a bank. It's like it pays about the same rate as a CD, except you have ready access to your cash and you can put your emergency fund there and see it grow. So that being said, I wanted to give you out some of that information going over this module, so that we can kind of, have good ideas, make sure that we're covering all the material that we need to. So yeah, this is week 3, right, in personal finance, and we're going over modules 4, modules 5. If you have any questions as you go through assignments and quizzes, reach out. Thank you.